Today, I want to talk about a model of our social reality that has become popular in recent years, one that describes the current power structure in the U.S. as being composed of the patriarchy, implying it is run by men for the benefit of men, which I will argue is a flawed and even irrational model. Those who promote this model of the world are primarily postmodernists who claim that social and cultural realities are determined by power relationships, which would include the social reality that involves promoting the model of the patriarchy. But if the patriarchy is in control and it determines these social and cultural realities, how did a movement that portrays it so negatively become so popular? That seems to be a contradiction. Now, the postmodernists may have a point that power relationships have an effect on what models are promoted and adopted, but they go too far. If the powerful choose models that serve their interests and not those of anyone else, the overall society will be weakened and can become unsustainable, which could lead to failure of the entire governing power structure. So the governing power structures which are sustainable are those where the elites promote models that serve the broad interests of the society to at least some extent, and not just exclusively their own interests. The postmodernists, and particularly those who promote the patriarchy model, do not appear to have a very sophisticated grasp of how models evolve. Note that there are an infinite number of possible models that can be imagined or constructed. This is true not just because there are an infinite number of possible interpretations of events that may have been recorded, but that there are an infinite number of possible ways to weave together the events as interpreted. Also, out of all the infinite possible models to choose from to represent social or physical realities, note that it is rational to prefer models that have the most utility. And utility is best demonstrated by the ability of the model to make correct predictions about future events or developments. And it is irrational to prefer a model for other reasons, such as immediate gratification from perceiving the model as increasing one's self-worth or otherwise providing transient emotional satisfaction. So the analysis of the choice of the patriarchy as a model to use to explain the social world should come down to whether the choice is made because of its predictive power or because it provides immediate emotional satisfaction to those making the choice. So what predictions would the patriarchy model have made that have come true or that have not come true? One would expect over the last few decades that 1. Fewer women would achieve high positions in politics, academia, or industry. That's false. 2. The pay of women would decline relative to men. False. 3. Fewer women than men would graduate from college. False. 4. Fewer girls than boys would graduate from high school. False. 5. Less money would be spent on breast cancer research than on prostate cancer research. False. 6. The rate of suicide of women relative to men would increase. False. 7. The rate of drug addiction of women relative to men would increase. False. 8. The rate of homelessness of women relative to men would increase. False. 9. The rate of women being incarcerated would start to catch up to that of men. False. 10. The penalties for women being convicted of the same crimes would equal that of men. False. 11. The rate of women receiving custody and divorce relative to men would decrease. False. And 12. The number of women killed in the workplace would start to approach that of men. False. And on it goes. It even seems that today on the internet, which is purportedly under the control of the patriarchy, speech promoting misinjury, the hatred of men, is not only allowed but promoted, while any speech that any woman interprets as possibly implying some level of misogyny is deemed hate speech and can be suppressed and not actually banned. The evidence is overwhelming that the patriarchy model does not provide accurate predictions about the future, so it is clearly not chosen for that reason. It has no utility in increasing understanding of the world. It has obviously become popular not for any rational reason, but for the irrational reason that it provides immediate emotional satisfaction for those choosing it as their model to represent the world. It is a perfect example of an irrational model. Now, one may argue that since it can serve as a rallying point for those with similar interests, there may be rational political reasons to promote it even if it is irrational. But that only serves narrow and short-term interests, as the use of irrational models pollutes the political dialogue with misinformation, which will create a plethora of predictable and unpredictable long-term costs.